what is going on today? So in today's video, I got the chance to speak with Dana Matternick. We got to talk about, what she does for a living, which is creating programs for mostly women and, helping them out with developing some better body confidence and creating healthier habits around your relationship with food and fitness, but just wellness and mental health in general. So she has a program set up right now that you can go and check out. I'll link her Instagram below right here. And I hope you guys enjoy listening to this conversation that we had. It really showed me a lot of different perspectives in terms of, my habits and the way my thought patterns work. So I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as I did. And one more thing. If you guys are liking these interviews that I'm doing and you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when I release these interviews every single week. If not, just watch this video and enjoy. All right, bang. We are recording. I'm here with Dana Matternick. Why don't you give yourself a little intro before we kind of jump into things? Tell people where they can find you on social media. Tell them what you're all about.
Sounds good. My name is Dana Matternick. I have always had a very athletic background and competed in bodybuilding, powerlifting. I used to be a competitive dancer, but about 3 years ago, I decided that was going to be my last bodybuilding competition. My mindset was not in a great place at all. And I really from there just started my own healing and recovery. And that kind of just brought me to the place that I am now, which I'm sure we're going to talk about all the in-betweens. But just being really focused on my mental health and making sure that I'm actually truly listening to what I need and my body and making sure that my mind's right too. So now I am into body confidence coaching and mindset coaching for women who have struggled or are still struggling around body confidence and food, because it's not worth struggling like that for your entire life. It's so not worth it. And there's so much more to life. And that's just kind of the message that I am spreading. So I share all that on my Instagram account. It's at The Wellness Gypsy with an IE for Gypsy. That's a little bit about me.
Beautiful. That's sick. So when you started your own personal healing, how did you kind of get started on that? What did that look like? Is it reading books? Is it going to see someone to talk to? What was that like?
Yeah, so I didn't really know there was a problem at first, like most people. And I have always been very independent and very strong-willed, and people could see that I was sick. I was shrinking, my body was shrinking, and people could see that. And I was just in such denial because especially being a part of the fitness industry, you are praised for being lean, you are praised for being very small and thin and looking muscular and quote unquote jacked and whatever. And I didn't really know that there was a problem. And also because I see myself every single day, I looked normal to me. But I was 40 pounds underweight. And I think probably 2 months after my last show, I'm like, okay, maybe these people that are telling me that I need help are right. I just wasn't in a good headspace. And so I was doing a bit of reading because of course, being super independent and very strong-willed, I just wanted to fix myself like everyone else. And I tried, but reality is sometimes you just need to reach out to someone who can actually help you, because when you're stuck in your own head and you're stuck in your own mind, your whole perception of everything is so distorted. So I think really just acknowledging for myself that I needed to reach out and surrendering to that and being okay with not being able to fix myself, that's kind of where it all started. And I reached out to a counselor, and that really just started the healing for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome, actually. I feel like it's something that's it's got to be more common than what we hear about, because I actually struggle with a pretty similar, I don't know if it happened the same way, and I don't think it happened like as drastically, but I had a pretty similar like kind of issue with the relationship with food after doing, I only did one show,
Mm-hmm.
and just like kind of yo-yoing in preparation for that, like kind of eating a ton and then eating nothing and then eating a ton to try and get bigger, and then just kind of switching all the time. After I had competed, I started eating a ton more again, and then it got to a point where I just couldn't eat anymore. I literally just felt sick every time I ate, so I stopped eating. I went from like probably 6 meals a day to maybe like one, if that, and I lost like 50 pounds in about a month and a half, 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of sitting at a really heavy weight to begin with. So I ended up like being all right and healthy. But I did have like one or two buddies that I saw every single day at work. And, you know, they were the guys that were like, dude, are you all right? Like, are you like, cause you kind of look like a little bit thinner. Like, are you okay? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like offering it, you know, like, let's go for lunch. Like, let's go. They were, you know, and it was just kind of something I didn't even realize was an issue. Kind of like you said, like, I didn't even think about it. I wasn't conscientious of it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, those two extremes are so common. Like even in between that, when I was struggling with binge eating, it's like, but you have to bulk to build muscle. So like that's accepted as well. Like both
Hmm.
sides are so accepted in the fitness industry that it's like, how can you actually make good decisions for yourself and your body when there's all these external things really just telling you that it's okay, this is just part of the process. Like that's just so messed up.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of an industry. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of an industry that like extremities are kind of like the end all and be all. Like it's kind of paramount
Mm-hmm.
to always be in some sort of an extremity. Like kind of everyone prides themselves on like, oh, you know, I haven't slept in 3 days because all I do is meal prep, and then I go to work, and then I go and work out, and nothing stops me, and no days off. And I like, like, like it's just like everything's so extreme. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
dude,
You're either in it or you're not. Like
yeah.
there's no in between.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's like definitely for, like a specific type of person. Like I think that you have to be like mentally dialed to kind of have that intensity in your life. Like I don't think that just anyone can do it. That's why it's kind of so impressive, because I've done it now and I know that like mentally I can't do that. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
do it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of more impressive to me now.
Well, it's crazy too. Like I did 6 shows and I did that within 3 years. So it was pretty much back to back. And I didn't notice there was any issues. Like there were certain like little things like, everyone talks about binging on peanut butter and like random stuff like that. And like,
Hmm.
there was like little things like that, but it didn't really register in my head that that was a problem. And it wasn't until the last show that I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind is so messed up right now. Like weighing on my food, like who does that? Like this is not how normal people live.
Hmm.
And it's crazy that I did it for that long. Like it still blows my mind that I did it for that long.
Yeah, there's certain parts of it where like elements of it have carried on into the rest of my life, like kind of where I could think back and be like, oh, I did this then, so I can do it now. And it kind of
Mm-hmm.
like certain things, like just kind of, like we were kind of saying earlier, like, being, if you haven't eaten in the morning and being able to move, like you kind of think of the times like, oh, I've moved on low fuel before. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things where it's like, I couldn't imagine doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's
Yeah.
no way. Like I just think that, I think that the way that I was doing it wasn't healthy, because kind of like you were saying, like I remember I had one cheat meal like every week at one point, and every single time I would go to McDonald's and get 4 junior chickens, 2 large fries, and a large root beer. Like
Yeah.
not even like
Everything that you can fit in your stomach and more, because
well,
that's
way
the
too
only
much.
meal.
Like way too much. And not just that, but it's like you shouldn't be having that. Like no
Yeah.
human should be eating that. Like no
Yeah.
one should be eating. I'm like, I'm not a nutritionist. I shouldn't give nutritional advice, to be fair. but I just don't think that people need to be eating that. And
Yeah.
that's what I did to myself every week. Like, it's kind of like, I feel like, A, I didn't do it properly, and B, I just don't think I'm like set up for that specifically. I
Mm-hmm.
just like, I think that you have to be kind of like made to do something like that. Like to be an Olympian or to be like, you know, a pro athlete, like you kind of just like have to be a little bit like genetically set up for it. Like you have, you know, not just
Mm-hmm.
like physically, but mentally as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
I,
was thinking like the other day, I was on my Instagram, I was like, you can literally train your mind to do anything, even the bad, you know, like,
mhm.
and that's exactly what I did when I was competing. It's like, I didn't really see there was a problem. I didn't think, like, I didn't even feel exhausted half the time because it was just like total tunnel vision mode. You know,
Mhm.
even after my last show, when I was running like literally a half marathon a day on like no food, and I did it because I had to do it, and I didn't even feel like that was just what I had to do, and I didn't even think otherwise.
Mhm.
You know, like that's what's crazy about competing, is like it is total tunnel vision, and you just do what you have to do, and that's where it's kind of like a slippery slope.
Yeah. Yeah. But the one thing that kind of I do hold kind of valuable to myself, like this is something that I always kind of think about and laugh, is like I think back and I'm like, man, you did all of that work and like nothing, no, like, I mean, you get like a little medal, cool. Like I didn't come high enough to get a trophy. I got a little medal, and it's like, you know, nobody paid you for that. Nobody cares. Nobody like, you know, it's not like anyone's ever going to think, hey, oh, Mark did a great job when he did that. You know, like
Yeah.
nobody cares. Nobody pays you. Like, it's just something you do like just for you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like it's like, because
It's an
there's so many
expensive
people.
hobby.
Yeah. And well, more than a hobby, like it's like kind of like, you know, I think about it all the time when I have to do things for money, like for work. So this is kind of something that I was going to say earlier before we started recording. But I can always think to myself, like, dude, you're doing this for money this time. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
did so many things that you didn't want to do for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
This time, you're actually going to get paid for it and you're going to complain. Like, that's kind of the way I can trick myself sometimes to kind of push through
Yeah.
that because, you know, I'm kind of similar to you. Like, we were kind of talking about just before we recorded. Like, I don't really like working for people sometimes. Like, I kind of just like to, you know, even if I'm going to put in the same amount of hours, I
Mm-hmm.
like to have the autonomy to choose which hours they are. You know, if I
Mm-hmm.
want to take like a break or for an hour or two in the middle of my day and like stretch or go for a bike ride or for a workout, then I want to be able to do that. Like, I don't like, you know, I don't mind working the hours. I just want to have the autonomy of it. So
Mm-hmm. The
sometimes that's kind
freedom.
of, yeah, so that's kind of sometimes how I can push through sometimes. It's like, I think like, you know, you did all that before and you weren't even getting paid for it. And like now you're being paid to work hard. So it's like, you might as well just like soak it up, like get as much as you can out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally.
So when did you start working for yourself?
Um, well, it's been on and off for a while. Like I got into fitness coaching when I was into the fitness thing before I even competed. And competing just takes a lot of time. It really does. You know, all the hours in the gym. Honestly, everything just, the day just seems to go so fast and time just like flies. And I was also getting obviously low on energy because I was low on food, and my brain just wasn't fully functioning, that I ended up taking a step back from that. But I went back and forth quite a bit. And then, yeah, after my last show, when things just kind of went downhill, I just said, you know what, I can't do this. I can't help people if I can't even be okay myself. If I'm struggling so much, there's no way I can help anybody. But that was kind of also my driving factor to healing, I guess, because as I started to open up on my Instagram at the time, I realized how many people were going through the exact same things. And me opening up was also helping other people, because I can't even count the times where I had women and actually men message me and be like, oh my gosh, I am struggling with the exact same thing right now. And it like really made me realize that, yeah, no one's alone in this. And there's a lot of people out there that need help, that need to focus on their mindset, focus on their mental health so they can heal. And that kind of like pushed me into recovery. And then from there, I was kind of like in my head, I'm like, okay, I need to heal myself so I can help all these people. And that's exactly what I want to do. So it was kind of like an on and off journey. And honestly, probably not until the beginning of 2019, I actually felt like I was ready to do that. But I think the time in my life just wasn't great for that. I was traveling that year and there's lots of stuff going on. So the one good thing that has come out of COVID is that it has really pushed me into doing what I actually want to do and creating the life that I want to create for myself and helping people create freedom in their life and help them learn to love their body and feel confident in their life and be free. So yeah, it's only been, I guess, probably since the beginning of this year that I was like really, really focusing on it. Although it was definitely in my head for a really long time, and I finally just took the action to do it. So,
All right.
yeah.
So for like someone that, doesn't really understand like what you kind of like do, what does that process look like? Are you walking someone through like kind of like a fitness routine? Or are you kind of like helping them just kind of create like habits, or like what does that look like?
Yeah. So when it comes to like body confidence and like, it really all comes down to mindset. So, mainly what I do is I've created a program. It's a 12-week program, and it's really just focusing on all the different components of mindset, whether that is limiting beliefs or shadow work or focusing on the ego and understanding the ego. It's really about peeling back all the layers, because oftentimes these mental health issues stem from something years and years ago, even your childhood or young adult years or wherever you are in your life. It's probably come from quite a few years ago. And the only way that you can fully heal and continue to be in a positive mindset, because it's easy to just cover things up and put a mask on or a band-aid or whatever and like create a temporary fix. But the only way to fully heal forever and like long lasting is to peel back all the layers and heal from the deepest roots. So that's really what the program focuses on. It's really just about understanding the underlying issues and really understanding the whys behind the actions that you're doing, so you can work through them and heal from them.
Mm-hmm. So like if that's like I don't want to kind of like get you to start giving away all your secrets or anything like that, but say for someone that doesn't really know what it is that's bothering them, like how could they start to maybe like just take a peek under the rug, like just take just get a hint of what it could be?
Yeah, I think it really starts with the way that you see yourself. So, and the way that you talk to yourself. So, really just getting aware with the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you see yourself. For instance, if you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, I look fat or I feel fat, like fat isn't a feeling. What do you actually feel? Right. And understanding the feeling that is actually behind the action, understanding the feeling behind your thoughts. That's like the easiest way to do it. And no, it's not hard, because we want to block out those feelings because they're uncomfortable and they're painful. But that's the only way, is really just opening your heart and surrendering to whatever it is that is really hurting you right now, so you can heal from it.
That's so insane. I've never heard like someone explain it like that, because not that I look in the mirror every single day. Like I'm kind of blessed. I don't look in the mirror and say that to myself every single day, but there is definitely like everyone has something that, they look in the mirror and they absolutely like just hate about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I think I've never heard someone say like you don't feel fat. Like fat is not a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never heard that before. That's actually really cool. I've never heard that, because you always hear things about like self-talk, and I've never heard it. I've just never heard it explained like that before. That's
Yeah,
really
there's a lot of words that people use as like a feeling.
cool.
that aren't really a feeling. It's just how you feel. It's just how you are seeing yourself in that moment.
Hmm.
But it's not a feeling, like you don't hear people saying, I feel fat, like thinking that like, what's fat? What does that feel like? Right.
Yeah.
So, actually understanding that, like understanding what that feels like is the actual, how you
Yeah.
feel.
Like fat's like a tissue. It's not an
Exactly.
emotion. You don't feel like tissue. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
too funny,
totally.
man. I have actually, yeah, I've never heard that before. I think that, like another common one that I deal with all the time, and this is something that, I tell myself, I don't believe it, but maybe probably like a small part of me does, but I just say it out of habit. And sometimes
Hmm.
I'll literally say it all the time. I'll be like, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Such an
Hmm.
idiot. Oh God, sorry, such an idiot, man. Like I'll
Hmm.
say that so often, and then sometimes people will catch me and they'll be like, dude, don't say that about yourself. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
it's
I
just like this.
wouldn't. Like
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh no, I wouldn't. I'm not an idiot. And then I do it again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just kind of pops up. It really is just a habit, it's
Hmm.
like one of those things that you're saying it subconsciously. You aren't aware of it. You don't have the awareness there. You're just kind of saying it, but you know
Hmm.
how you actually feel about yourself. Right. And like these words just kind of come up, but it'd be interesting to like kind of work back from that and see if there's something
Yeah.
underlying of why you say these things to yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to crack that journal open after this. Wow,
Yeah.
there's got to be something there. That's cool. I'm happy. All right. We're like what, 20 minutes in now. I've already got a clean takeaway right there. This is perfect. We're off to a good start. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so since you started working for yourself, you said earlier you're like, I couldn't see myself working for someone again. Like, kind of
Hmm.
explain to me like why, like what benefits have you kind of seen from working for yourself? And like, were they benefits that you already knew about before you were working for yourself? Like while you were working as an employee for someone else, did you already know that these were going to be sick? You were like, oh yeah, I'm going to love this, this, and this. Or were they like hidden benefits that you found afterward?
Well, as far as working for someone, I haven't really worked like a career. I guess so. Technically, I'm also a hairdresser. I used to do hairdressing, and so I have worked in 2 salons as a hairdresser before. Um, but the last job I had before I went traveling last year, I was just managing a tanning salon. So it's like it's not a career, right?
Mm,
Um, and something that's a really, really huge part of my life is freedom in general, freedom to move, freedom to hop around, freedom to book a flight and go anywhere kind of thing. Like I definitely I'm definitely a free spirit. If people
mm,
who know me well are like, yeah, you're such a free spirit. Like I just like to fly by the seat of my pants and have that freedom to do so. And it's not that working for the employees that I've worked with was a bad experience, but I'm also like living someone else's dream. And to me, there's no point in doing that anymore. This year for me personally, besides everything else that has happened in the world, has been really, really challenging. And back in January, there was a family emergency, and that kind of really opened my eyes to how short life can be, and just that you need to do this right now. Like this is your time, girl. Like just do it. Like what do you have to lose? And that's the thing.
mm,
It's like I'm I'm known to have this shiny object syndrome where I pick up a million things because I have all these ideas in my head, and I'm constantly like, oh my gosh, this would be such a cool thing. Like I should do this too. And so like I start all these mini projects, but of course you can't actually keep up with a million different projects. And so, things get hard, and then I step back from that one, and then things get hard, and then I step back from that one, and then maybe I pick up another one or whatever it is, but I never end up getting accomplished with anything because I just have all these like half bridges built, and
mhm.
that's it. So I'm like, no, you're focusing on one thing, pick your thing, you're doing it now, and you can always add to it. All the other ideas that I have and continuously have, I write them down right away. I'm like, okay, this is something, I'll leave this in this book right now to pull out once I have this part of my life figured out. Once I have been successful in this area, and then I'll work back, and then I'll start adding things and doing stuff like that. But yeah, I guess like the main point of of this topic and this conversation was just the freedom aspect and being able to pick up and go wherever the heck I want. I love travel. I love freedom. I love not having any commitment to, let's say, a piece of land or a house or an employer, whatever it is. Like, I don't want that commitment. I want to commit to myself because I know I have it in me.
That's sick. That's sick. And so were you fearful at all, like kind of like leaving the last job that you had? Were you, or I guess like kind of the first time, because you said it's been a little bit on and off, like the first time you left a job and you're like, okay, I'm going to, try and do this by myself. I don't want to have anyone kind of over top of me. Like, were you fearful at all, or were you anxious about that?
So this is actually the first time that I've actually so before I'd always still had my job and just did it on the side.
Okay.
And just made it work, and it was kind of like a side hustle, I guess. But yeah, this was the first time in my life that I don't have a job with an employer and I'm just doing it by myself. And the last job, like, I quit just before I went traveling. So it wasn't to do with the job. It was just, I want to live my life. I want to hop on a plane and go travel.
Yeah. So so I guess like when you left, your last job and you were kind of like, okay, you went and traveled, but like kind of just doing it by yourself. Were you kind of like, do you get anxious about that? Like,
oh yeah. I think more so now though. And actually I was talking to this. So I have a business coach, and I was talking to her about this. And I think I don't know if I would consider it fear. Like, I'm not really afraid of like failing, if that's what you mean. I don't really have fear there, but it's more like just a really big sense of overwhelm. And yeah, just like a really big sense of overwhelm, and like just knowing that I'm going through this massive shift and this massive like up level of my life kind of thing. And like with that, like that's change, right? And with change, there is always going to be fears because it's kind of going into the unknown. But I kind of keep reminding myself that as an entrepreneur, you are already stepping outside of the box. You are already facing that fear that a lot of people won't face. And if I've already done that, I can be successful. I can get past whatever other fears and barriers I feel. So yeah, I'm just kind of like lots of meditating and talking myself through it, and like just trying to, zen out sometimes, and really listening to myself, like when I'm doing work, and really listening to myself. And if I don't have it in me to be working, then allowing that space and setting those boundaries.
Yeah. I think I was just listening to someone yesterday. I can't remember who it was on this podcast, but they were just talking about basically, like once they started working for themselves, one of their biggest fears was, like they have to produce, they have to make stuff all the time. They have to, this guy was, he makes podcasts or whatever. So he's making like content, right? And he's like, I have to, always be writing things. And one of the only differences between being a writer for myself and being a writer for another company is just like being able to, like, the difference is who's saying when to stop, right? Like, do you stop, at 5:00? Do you start again after dinner, maybe before bed? And then like, like who's saying when you do it, right? And that's like kind of the only difference he found.
Yeah. I would say definitely having those time boundaries is really, really important, because otherwise, like, I could work all day. I really could. I could sit on my laptop all day, like, and I have done it. And then the next day I'm feeling like crap because I'm mentally drained. I'm mentally exhausted and I feel burnt out. So I've kind of like, I've really just had to figure it out as I go, and get real with myself about, actually needing that time off, because it's okay. Who creates this like no one has a checklist for what you have to do as an entrepreneur. You create that
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's that was actually somewhat of a fear, I guess, for me, is like, but that's not what other people are doing. And I think there was a little bit of comparison there, even though I don't even know what their program looks like. I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. Like, I don't know any of that, but just like, I think in my head, exactly. And in my head, I had this idea of like, they probably follow this exact checklist to build their program and to do all this stuff. And like, they obviously know because they have like X amount of followers or X amount of people that comment on their stuff. Like, who creates these rules? We create those rules, you know, like no one else is in charge of that. And yeah, you just have to remind yourself, like, you're in charge of your life now. You know, you don't have to listen to anybody. You can work 2 hours a day. You could work 10 hours a day. Like, do what serves you best and do what feels best. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the one who's in charge of your own life if you're running your own business.
Yeah. And especially with like programs, like especially like, especially a program like that, because I'm thinking like just in terms of like, you know, if you were making like a simple, let's say like a simple program would be like, you know, like 10 pounds of weight loss. Like that would be like a simple program to make for someone. But I feel like doing like what you do is a little bit more in depth, right? But let's just say, like, for argument's sake, you're just making a program for like 10 pounds of weight loss, 15 pounds of weight loss. Like, you don't know what your competitor's program looks like in terms of, you know, is it something that they just like read? Is there something that they get to connect with you on video so you can see how they do it, the exercises? Is it something that they touch on nutrition with? Is this something that they're going to be able to use like tools from it later on after the program's done? And that's just like with a simple goal. You know, like there's no way to tell what someone else's product is unless you like
buy it for yourself.
Get it for yourself, or B, speak with them and trust them what they say.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no real way to know. And then the other thing I was going to say is, you know, like price point as well. Like you could be at a different price point, which could have like a completely different targeted demographic. Like if you're offering,
and that's that's actually something I found a little bit intimidating, is because talking to different business coaches and like different people and seeing what people charge for their services and stuff like that. And I'm like, in my head, I know this is also lots of stuff that I personally still have to work through, like a lot of money mindset stuff that I just never even thought I needed to work through. But you know, seeing people in like a basic 12-week program for $2,000, like I personally, I don't know any time that I've actually had the money to spend $2,000 flat out on a program. Like that's a lot of money to throw out, or not throw out, but like to put towards something that like, that's an investment, you know, especially if you are younger as well. You know, you probably not, I don't want to like put people in categories, but there's a good chance you're probably not making as much because you haven't been working for as long, or you're just starting a new career or whatever. Like that's a lot of money. And that was a huge thing that, I'm still working through, is like understanding, really truly seeing my value in my services. And deep down, I know how much work that I put in. I put in a lot of freaking work. Like, you know, I really make sure that it's detailed. I make sure that what I provide for people is going to give them results, because otherwise, what does that say about me? Right? Like I want to give them the best experience so they have a good, you know, so they can give me some good feedback, and I want to know that it's actually helped them in their life. And so it's just like actually understanding your value and not looking at what other people are charging, because, you know, anyone can put a number on anything. You could literally charge anything. And if you have that authority and people trust you for what you do and see your value, they'll still buy it. At the end of the day, they'll still buy it. So it's an interesting kind of field going into, in the sense that like when I was fitness coaching, like, and I know lots of other fitness coaches that I've talked to, people don't charge a lot for programs at all. People don't really charge enough, in my opinion, now that I'm at this place that I'm at now, and see, you know, the actual time and effort and value that you're providing for that person. You know?
Yeah. I mean, the only time I could say I could relate was, you know, when I worked at a gym, I ended up going to a different location, and that location was at a much higher price point. And so I was selling gym memberships to people for about $150 a month with like a good $300 joining fee. And so like,
That's a lot.
yeah. And so I kind of had a similar struggle because I like, you know, for someone that would be like, you know, like later, like say like in their 30s, 40s, whatever, right? Like I was going to say later in life, but 30 is really not that much older than I am at this point. Like it's only a few more years, right? So I gotta say, like, someone that's in like their 30s, 40s, I would be like, all right, yeah, like if this person loves fitness, they could probably like definitely afford this, and they'll invest because they'll like it. And then whenever someone that would be like, you know, either like 18 to say like 25 range, I would be like, dude, this is Vancouver. Rent's already expensive. Like, who's got an extra 150 a month? And then who's going to spend that on a gym?
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't a necessity, you know?
Yeah.
Even though I like considered it to be at the time because I only knew exercise in a gym really. I like, you know, it's not a necessity. So I just didn't like, it didn't cross my mind that these people would actually spend the money for it. And then so many people did. Like it kind of blew my mind. Like the first few people that, you know, ended up joining, I was actually kind of like astonished. I was like, whoa, okay, sweet. Like that's kind of cool. And then like that's kind of how I realized like if someone perceives the value to be there, it's there. Like it's there. They're going to get out of it what they want most of the time. Right? Like if you get a program, even like I said, like if it's like a simple one, like say like a 10-pound weight loss, and you're like, hey, this is not going to work for me. This is going to be garbage. I'm not going to get anything out of it. Like, you're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to follow things. You're not going to be disciplined. Like, but if you believe it and you follow it to a T, and you're kind of even like adding a little bit extra to it, like maybe extra cardio or whatever it is, you're going to get to your goal most likely, right? Like, it's kind of like that perceived value kind of adds to it, even if it is like a placebo.
Yeah, and it comes down to confidence too, like in the way that you're presenting the offer to these people, right? Like if you're like, oh, I would never spend this, like why would I even offer it to them? Well, like no, people are going to read that, right? But if you actually see that there are going to be people that would see the value in it, and you present it to those people, and you know the right people will come to you, and they'll see the value in it. And if you're confident in explaining the value, explaining the benefits, and the benefits of the benefits, like people are going to buy it. It's just how it works.
Yeah. And so that's sick. So your program's not $2,000 a month. It's a 12-week program, right?
No.
$2,000. Okay, sweet. So some people are probably going to be a bit more interested now, but that's sick.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe that'd be sweet. If you're like, I don't know who you'd have to be doing them for, or what your program would have to entail, but $2,000 for 12 weeks. Yeah, that's sick, dude. That's sick. I wish I could do that. That's so sweet. How long have you kind of been like, if you don't mind me asking, like how long have you been kind of working on like developing that program? I'm not asking like the price or anything like that, but just like out of curiosity, like how long does that take to build?
Yeah. Honestly, like, so right now I'm working with beta clients for it. So I'm working with 3 women at a more discounted price to really just get feedback, really to hear out how they like it. And then I can also kind of recreate it, because when I eventually do the full launch, you know, you want to make sure that it's all going smoothly and stuff. So yeah, it's been, I think for a while I didn't really feel like I had enough direction in what I wanted. And so when I started working with my business coach, I probably took like I was just making content for social media, and the rest I probably took like 3 weeks off of like anything else, because I just was like so overwhelmed. Like even hiring a business coach, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a big step, you know, like it's a huge step. And I think I was just really overwhelmed from that. But yeah, I would say it's been like a month, less than a month of building. But I already had a really, really solid idea. Like once I kind of allowed myself to just like calm down, and once I got past like the overwhelm and stuff like that, like I already had a solid idea in my head even before hiring a business coach. It was just filling in the little blanks. So, and exactly how I wanted to present it, if I wanted to use any platforms or if I wanted to do it as a course, like there's all these like other variables. And like for me personally, like I also want to look at it as how can I make this the best value, but also the least amount of work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can work with more people and still provide the
Scalable.
exact same value. Yeah, exactly. But not work as much, or not constantly be busy with
Mm-hmm.
that, so that's kind of also been that's really just part of the process, is really just figuring out exactly how I want to present it, and what, and also really understanding my time as a huge value as well,
Mm-hmm.
and being true to myself and how much time I actually want to provide to people and how much time I want to be available to people. Because just like anything, like if you're always giving and giving, you're not going to feel satisfied in the end. And it's just like you're doing all this work for nothing is what it feels like, because you're
Mm-hmm.
just always going to be burnt out. Your cup's going to be half empty or fully empty. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make sure that your needs are 100% met, and then you can give and you can help and you can serve.
Yeah, I think there's like a proverb or a saying, I can't remember what it is, but like basically you got to take care of yourself to take care of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
wild. So when you're making this program, what do you say like kind of influences it more? Because you said you did like a little bit of reading on, like your own personal healing, but you were also kind of speaking to someone as well for guidance at
Mm-hmm.
the time. Like what kind of influence like kind of the creation of your program to heal people more? Was it like kind of stuff you read on your own, or was it kind of more advice that you were given from, whoever you were speaking with?
Yeah. So, I really kind of created a timeline for my own personal healing and like everything that I did. Um, so aside, like I mentioned at the beginning, like at first I went to a counselor, and then I ended up going to an NLP, because counseling, like for me, counseling doesn't work. Counseling is like talking to a wall. That's how I feel. There's no emotion or connection, and I needed that. And so I started working with an NLP, which is like a neuro linguistic programming coach, I guess. And that basically, if you don't know what an NLP is,
I
it's
don't. Yeah, I don't.
okay. So it's basically works at reprogramming your thoughts and your thought patterns. So it's a form of counseling, I guess, but it's a lot more personable for sure. And that was pretty helpful. I got a lot of tools there, and I started like kind of healing myself from there a little bit. That was probably around like maybe October 2017 ish. And then I guess things started going a little bit more downhill. I had applied for a program, an eating disorder program, a group program, and that started in January. So that was a 9-week program. And I think, like, truthfully, I think I just needed a bunch of other people that were also struggling with the same thing. Like, I think
Mhm.
that was the biggest thing for me, is just getting that connection with other people that understood and got it. Or like, I knew that they got it because they were going through it too. Whereas like, there are lots of people that say they get it, but like they don't really know necessarily if they haven't been
Mhm.
through it.
Mhm.
And from there, after that program, after that 9 weeks, I was in like a much better headspace, and I pretty much did my own work from there. And we did get a lot of tools and a lot of resources, but for the most part, it was just tuning in with myself, because I was so disconnected from myself, because I was so used to just like roboting through life. I
Mhm.
was so used to just being a robot and like doing what I had to do, or what I thought I had to do, or doing things based on what I thought other people might think. And I just wasn't living true to myself.
Mhm.
Um, and that was really the biggest thing, was just like accepting that I already have the answers in me. I already have everything that I need to know inside. And I just wasn't giving myself the trust to see that. So after this program, it really kind of opened my eyes to that. And I realized that I know what I have to do. I just have to listen to myself, because I wasn't doing that. I was doing lots of reading. I was listening to podcasts, but yeah, the biggest thing was tuning into myself and what I actually needed and being true to that. So yeah, like when I was creating the program, it was really about looking back at my entire healing and asking myself, like, what did I need and what are the steps that I took to get there, and like kind of creating a timeline. But also I was connecting with a lot of people on social media that were struggling with body image. And I also just asked what they struggle with, right? Because that's another thing, is you have to connect with your audience. And I really just said, like, who struggles with body image kind of thing. Like, you do these polls on Instagram or whatever, and then you send them a message and you ask if you can ask more questions. And I did a lot of market research that way, because that's really the best way to do it, is to know what people are struggling with. And I've used so many different tools, and I know that they don't all work for everybody, because people are different learners. People are different. Some people really understand the visuals and understand, like, this is what is going on in your brain. You have it on a piece of paper, right? And some people are like not visual at all, and they need to have writing, and they need to have video, or they need to, like, everyone learns differently. And so it was really just connecting with my audience and really asking them what it is that they struggle with and understanding how I could help them. Yeah,
it's interesting to see the way that, different people can kind of consume information and have it like actually click, because, there's so many times where, like, say, like, you read something, like, say, okay, like for myself, like, I learn well from like hearing and speaking. So like if I hear something and I have to remember it, then I'll say it to myself, or things like that, right? So like, I don't know how many times I've read something and then I walk away and I completely forgot it, and then sometimes you hear it in a certain way, like kind of like earlier with like the whole, like, you don't feel fat's not a feeling. Like sometimes there's just like ways you can hear it and it just like something flicks, like you kind of like instantly understand it. So it's kind of cool that, I think you're right there. Like there's so many different ways that people can kind of, like consume it. And so, that's weird. But what I wanted to go back to, I'm trying to remember what it was that I was kind of stuck on for a second there. The first one was with the NPL, NLP.
NLP, yeah.
NLP, yeah. So with the NLP, is that kind of like, so do they work like similar to like cognitive behavioral therapy? Like, is that similar to what it is?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
It's basically like reprogramming. I don't
Like your
actually.
thought patterns, like your thought
Reprogramming
processes.
thought patterns and stuff like that based on your actions, because really, our thoughts come from, like, we have all these thoughts and we don't actually, like, the thoughts come up and then there's an emotion, but we also don't remember the starting, like what happened before the thought, right? So it's understanding that first part of what happened before the thought, that moment, just the second before the thought, and then understanding the thought and then the feeling that thought brought, right? So that's really what NLP is about. It's kind of backtracking all your thought processes and understanding where they actually stemmed from.
Yeah. And so, cognitive behavioral therapy is kind of similar. Like, I remember the first page, this is like the one thing that kind of stuck out to me the most, was it was more about like your perceptions of things, like news, or say, like, with the example that I remember the most from like the front page of the information booklet was, like, say, like, your friend calls you or texts you and they say, I know we have plans tonight, but I won't be able to make it. That's it. Like, the first thing is like, did I do something wrong? Like, for me, like, I'm like, did I do something wrong? Is everything okay? Like, you know, like maybe I messed up, maybe I made someone else mad and they spoke with them, or like maybe he's hurt, maybe like
Yeah.
something's wrong, and then they're just
Yeah.
like, oh no, I just worked a long day and I just had to sleep. And or like maybe they're like, oh yeah, like I was actually just going to the mall to get you a present or something like
Hmm.
that. Like, you know, you never actually know, but you just like
Hmm.
assume, and then it instantly makes you feel a certain way. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly. And so that's a thought. And then like it's finding the feeling behind the thought. So what made you feel that? Like, why did you think that thought?
mhm,
But also understanding the before of that thought. So the before is not even him canceling or them canceling, right? There's something before that that you have to figure out. And it's like connecting all those dots,
mhm,
which is hard because it's like these tiny, tiny little experiences that we do so not like we do so unconsciously. They're just
mhm.
like part of our actions, right? But there's
Yeah.
always something in between.
Yeah, after doing that, I always kind of looked back to all the times that people would tell me things and then I would believe it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think about, you know, like how many times did that person just assume something and then told me and I believed it? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't even like trust my own assumptions now because I'm like, wait
Mm-hmm.
a second, Mark, is this actually true? Like, okay, no, it's probably not probable. Like, let's just cross it off and like see what happens. How about that?
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens, right? Like, you don't have to predict everything sometimes. Like, how about you just see what happens? Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
I think back and I like sometimes when people tell me things, I'm like, maybe that person just assumed that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes there's also some form of judgment from
Mm-hmm.
yourself with
Mm-hmm.
there. So if you aren't questioning, it's like you're judging yourself for not questioning. It's like
Yeah.
a loop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially like I'm pretty skeptical as is, so like if I don't question it, there's something wrong. But I actually it just hit me. I just remembered what I was gonna ask. Okay, perfect. So you said that you kind of lost yourself, or you were feeling like really robotic.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's something that like I commonly hear about. I felt like that so many times, and I still kind of feel like that some days, to be honest. Like you're just kind of, you know, especially like for me, like right now, I'm kind of, you know, saving up a little bit more. And so, you know, I'm working day jobs. And so you wake up for work and you go to work and then you have to be there for 8 hours. And you're just kind of thinking, like, dude, I want to be A, not working for someone else, B, working on my own thing that I want to
Mm-hmm.
work on. But I know I have to make money right now. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just kind of feel robotic because it's like, okay, like my brain just shuts off sometimes at work because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm just making my money and that's that. Like, I just have to kind of do this for now.
Yeah.
And, you know, like
Doing what you got to do.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, you kind of, you know, obviously, I'm going to say, like, I have a personal bias because this is something that I'm doing right now. I think that it is like, I think go for it, work and kind of, you know, make your money and you stack your chips while you can. And then if
Mm-hmm.
that's what it takes to start your own thing, then do it. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the way I look at it. But it's so weird sometimes. It is such a like kind of detached feeling sometimes because you are just kind of stuck in the rhythm and you are just kind of robotic. And excuse me, and not that you're not doing things that you don't like I obviously chose a job that I enjoy, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is tough because sometimes I do feel kind of robotic, and I feel like so many people I know I've spoken to and they're just kind of feeling the same way. They're just stuck in a routine.
Mm-hmm.
Like what, like do you think that you have to work by yourself? Do you think that you have to be self-employed to kind of escape that? Do you think that there's a way to kind of not feel like a routine if you work for someone else?
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to your mindset. I don't think it's about working for someone or not working for someone.
Mm,
I think it's just really about being present in your day to day. Like you're quote unquote roboting through life because you're not being fully present with what you're doing in every single action. Because how many
mm,
times are you fully aware of everything that you're doing throughout the day? Probably not. Most people aren't because most people don't have that awareness. um, so it's really just seeing and understanding, like, okay, first of all, understanding why you're doing it. And just knowing that, like, you just have to be aware of your surroundings and be present every single day, and you aren't going to feel like a robot anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like with that, meditation is really helpful, or breath work, or like lots of forms of mindfulness, like just being mindful in general. Same thing goes with eating. Like I used to eat on a time schedule pretty much, right? I would have my first meal at 6, and then my next at 9, and then my next at 12. And like, it was pretty much the same every single day. But in doing so, that's me being a robot, because in doing so, I'm not actually listening to my body. Maybe I'm not hungry, but my body's just like programmed to eat at that time now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it anyways. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to actually get out of that is to trust yourself and create that awareness for everything that you're doing. Because if you're not actually creating that awareness, like, you're just going to continue doing the same actions. And how are those actions actually serving you? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like kind of why you get the craving, I feel like as well, because it's one thing if you are kind of like you're on a schedule and you're eating at certain times because like maybe you're not hungry at that time, but perhaps like you have a huge window of time where you're not going to be able to eat, like if you have to go to work, say, or if you're going to sleep and you have to eat. Like I can kind of see there is sort of gray areas there. But I feel like, so like for myself, one struggle that I had a few months back, actually, like this is still pretty recent. I didn't really get it under control until like probably this month. But I was like so addicted to sugar, and not just like candy sugar, but like I mean like fruits and like carbs, like just like all like all carbs basically. Like if I didn't eat carbs for like 2-3 hours, I would get like physical, like I'd shake and I'd get like sweats, and B, I'd be so irritable, so grumpy, so tired. Man, like I was such a jerk. And like I had so many people, like one of my best buddies all the time jokes about this with my parents. And he'll say like, dude's hungry, like he needs to eat. He's getting cranky. Like every couple hours he'll make that joke. And it's not even a joke. Like it became literal. Like it's like, oh, this guy's hungry. And then he knew before I did. It's like, oh, I'm hungry. And then that addiction got so bad that, I would start eating when I wasn't hungry. Like I would just be kind of like either bored or, like I'd get like sidetracked, because obviously you can't pay attention when you're like so addicted to sugar that way. You like can't pay attention to things. So I would find myself eating random snacks like pretty much every hour. And it's like, dude, you're not even hungry. Like you're full. Why are you eating? Like,
it's easy to get in that mindset. It really is. And I think part of that too, like if you were just eating fruit, like there is probably some sort of blood sugar imbalance there too. And so you probably are still getting you might even still be getting like the hunger signals, like stomach growls and stuff like that, because your blood sugar is like spiking like crazy. But I mean, it is also easy to get addicted to sugar, because it's one of those foods that's just made to be like that. Like, why do you think obesity is such a problem? Like, it's because these foods are, once you start having them, you crave them more and more and more. And it's finding that balance, and also making sure that, like, you can have carbs. Carbs are super healthy for you, but you just have to also balance out the other macronutrients and make sure that you're getting like a balanced plate of food.
Yeah, I think that, it's not always just like, because like when people say like a sugar addiction, they think, well, like at least I used to think of, like sour cherry blasters, ice cream, chocolate, like all these different things. But like, I think if I actually start to think back to it, like my nutrition was like, I'd like to say almost on point. And then it like somehow spiraled out of nowhere. And what I think it was, I had it in my head that I was just eating clean carbs, like I was just eating basically like fruits. Like I had I wouldn't say caveman, but a very like rudimentary diet, like pretty much just like a meat, rice, and broccoli. very little other
A
vegetables.
bro diet.
Yeah, like very little other vegetables. It was the only, I wouldn't eat leaves before until like maybe a month or two ago.
Leaves.
Leaves. I wouldn't eat like, yeah, I wouldn't eat spinach. I wouldn't eat lettuce. I wouldn't eat
Oh
like
my
anything
gosh.
that was a leaf. I avoided. I hated the texture. I still hate it, but I make myself eat it now. But yeah, I literally every meal was meat and then rice and then like broccoli or
Yeah.
cauliflower pretty much every time. But I feel like eating so much rice and quinoa and fruit so frequently, like I was
Yeah.
eating like basically every 2 hours, and then that's
Yeah.
basically what my body demanded. And so I did,
Yeah.
like at some point I just stopped kind of, caring what quality the carb was, because I'm like, dude, I don't want to shake. How about that? Like, how about I don't want to be cold sweats at noon, right?
Mhm.
Like so I would start jamming anything. I'd be like, okay, 2 bananas. All right, I'm still kind of jittery, and then like I would just start having stupid things like a lot of candy. That's why I say sour cherry blasters. Stupid,
They're
stupid,
addicting. Okay.
stupid. And so yeah, like it kind of threw me through a loop. And then I started to realize I was watching a video and someone was explaining it, and they were explaining their friend doing it. They were
Hmm.
like, dude, can you give me some like sugar? Because I shake when I don't have sugar. And then he said what he said to his friend, which was, an alcoholic shakes when they don't have alcohol, right?
Hmm.
And then I was like, holy
Just chuck you
man.
right into the bus.
Yeah. I was like, oh man. I didn't even realize it, right? Like I didn't even realize it. It kind of goes back to, just being robotic with like every 2 hours. I was like, okay, well, we gotta have some sort of carb,
Yeah, I was going
right?
to say it comes down to awareness as well. It's like, okay, before you eat, are you actually hungry or are you filling a void? It's really easy to emotional eat. It's when you're
Or just
stressed.
when you're bored.
Yeah, when you're bored, when you're stressed, but like when you're bored, there's another feeling behind that boredom, right? So you're feeling bored, but that makes you feel uncomfortable in some way and you want to fill that void. So what's that discomfort that you're feeling and where is that stemming from? Right. So it's like understanding, yeah, really understanding the feeling behind the feeling or the feeling behind the action behind the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
That's nuts. So do you think that you could have been able to like kind of reprogram your thought process on that kind of thing? Do you think that you'd be able to find that awareness without, kind of like reaching out and getting that help that you got?
Um, I mean, I'm a pretty determined person, so I'm sure I could have. Um, Although I would not be where I am now, for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think anyone has the ability to heal themselves, but I don't think that, I already see it as like my life is already so valuable as it is, and my time is so valuable. And I was struggling for like, well, consciously struggling, I guess you could say, for 2 years. And 2 years is a long time for me. Like, I see people who have struggled for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
20 years of struggling. Like, that's a long time. And I was just like, I kind of just wanted to fast track it. And I had finally just said to myself, reach out. You need to just reach out,
Mm-hmm.
because it really, like, people have this idea that it makes you super weak and like you're a failure if you can't fix yourself. And that's how I thought for such a long time. And that's why I didn't reach out for such a long time. But now looking back, I'm like, how much strength and courage it takes to reach out to someone for help,
Mm-hmm.
to finally let go of the control that you are trying to have over yourself and actually ask for help. Like, that takes more strength than anything. And that takes way more strength than being stuck in the place that you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like, of course, I think anyone can heal themselves, but it's definitely well worth your time
Mm-hmm.
to reach out, and it doesn't make you weak.
Yeah, 100%. So did you kind of struggle with the idea? I get you kind of answered, but like, did you ever have like kind of like an internal conflict, or did you kind of struggle with that idea of reaching out to someone, or like were you fearful of it at all? Like, was there anything that kind of held you back at all?
Yeah, really just the fact that I was so certain I could heal myself. But mind you, when I was saying these things to myself, when I was so certain, I was still doing the exact same behaviors that I was doing before. And like me healing myself was like not having a bad binge or something like that, when that's still super disordered behavior. And I, like, looking back now, I just was never in the right mind to actually heal myself, because I just wasn't, you know, like even when I first finished my last show and I was running half marathon a day, like I was literally running 21 kilometers a day and then working out. And like, yeah,
That's insane.
I don't even know. The thing is, like, I was like, oh yeah, like I'll reverse diet. Like, you know, everyone talks about reverse dieting, slowly adding calories back in. And so like, yeah, if I went for a run, I would have like a little treat maybe, but that didn't.
One Reese's Pieces cup or something like that.
Not even, like maybe a grape. Like literally.
Brutal.
Yeah, like,
oh man,
crazy.
That's brutal. And so, damn it, I forgot again now. This is gonna come back to me again. Oh man, I can't believe that. That's so annoying. I was just about to ask it too. Dang, man. Dang.
About
I can't remember what it was.
I don't know.
I can't remember what it was. My ADHD just poking through. Oh, I almost had it there. Dang it. Oh, I know I can get this. Give me like 10 more seconds and then I'll start talking about something else. I know it'll come back to me. I'm gonna drop it.
Okay.
So with that, dang, now I'm completely stunned. Absolutely stunned. Like a deer in the headlights now. That's nuts. So when you started kind of, you know, this, okay, now I remember. Sweet. Okay, perfect. Yes, that's the best. Okay, so when you started to reach out for help, like what was the kind of the thing that, you know, made you think to yourself? Because like for the longest time for myself, like when I had to reach out to go see a doctor in regards to my mental health, for the longest time, you know, I was like, is this a problem that's like big enough to speak to someone about, or is it in my head? Like, am I just going nuts right now? Because like I've had a couple people tell me I should get help, but I didn't feel like I needed help. Like I couldn't see the destructive ways in my own patterns. Right.
Okay.
And so another thing that I kind of struggle with, it was every time I try and like help myself, I would, you know, make improvements, but it wasn't in the areas of my life that actually needed to be improved. So I ended up, you know, feeling like I was working super hard, but I wasn't getting any results. If anything, like I kind of said, is it kind of threw off other things in my life. Like when I was, you know, kind of struggling with my eating, it wasn't because of anything to do with my nutrition, really. It was the way that I was acting. It was kind of like the way I was treating, you know, myself, like my work. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't spending time with my family properly. Like there was just so many other like kind of pieces missing from the puzzle that it was like, no wonder you weren't eating properly. Like there's no wonder, right? So for a long time I struggled because I didn't know kind of if I should reach out. I had like kind of an internal conflict all the time. Like on bad days, I'd be like, okay, I need to go and see somebody and speak to them about this. And then on good days, I'd be like, dude, you're crazy for thinking that. Go call your doctor and cancel the appointment. And it was like so flipping, flopping. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and like start helping myself. And it didn't, like I wasn't working on the right areas. I was kind of, you know, blinded by my own ego. So I was like, oh, I can, you know, I'm good enough to fix myself. Like I can just fix this. Like, oh, I can just fix this. And then I would, you know, confuse myself thinking I was doing progress, but I wasn't. So that's kind of what I forgot, because it was a big idea. But that being said, what kind of, like advice, like what would you tell someone? Because, like I find it hard to kind of voice this. Like I kind of find it hard to put words to it. So like, what would you say to someone that's kind of stuck in, I'd say like that was like, I consider that part of my life purgatory. Like I was just stuck. I was just like stuck.
I mean, I had a breaking point, but like, that's not really, like, okay, so I had a breaking point probably like a few months after my last show, after everyone was like telling me that I needed help. And I was really, really frustrated with myself and the fact that I couldn't stop binging, that I just could not stop binging. And then, like I literally Googled like how to stop binging. Like, this is just what I did. And, it was like, well, remove the trigger foods. Well, everything was a trigger food, like I would binge on freaking protein powder, like, and so, I had a breaking point one day and I had a really, really bad binge the night before. And I went to the gym the next morning and I was sitting on the spin bike for 4 hours, bawling my eyes out because I was just sitting there. And in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, so I wasn't even going to the like normal gym that I was going to at that time, because I had already gained some weight and I was just embarrassed to go to that gym. So I was going to a rec center and I was sitting on the spin bike and I was like bawling my eyes out because I'd been there for 4 hours. And then I like have my head down. I'm slowly walking to like the Stairmaster, and then I hop on the Stairmaster for another hour and a half. And I think I just like something clicked. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Like, this is honestly so messed up. Why am I still here? And that was like a huge, like, obviously not everyone has a point in their journey like that. Although there is usually, a bigger something that happens. Some people get rushed to the hospital. Some people, like there's something that happens. And I wouldn't say that that's like there's any reason is a big reason to reach out. That was what sparked it for me, but any reason is a big reason to reach out. And if you are always thinking, like obsessively thinking about something, if you can't get something off your mind, like for instance, I could not stop thinking about food. I could not stop thinking about some cheat food or some treat or like something that I wasn't allowing myself. And I know like not everyone's mental health journey has to do with food. But it's just really realizing what is that crippling thought that you keep feeling? Why do you feel that? Or what even is that? You don't even have to know how or why you feel that. What is that? That's a reason to get help. If you're constantly thinking about the same thing, if you're constantly reliving these same thoughts in your head over and over and over, and they're painful, like you're probably numbing with something, and that's the time that you need to reach out and get help. I don't know, like my mental health journey has always been extreme, whereas I know some people, so I can't really speak for people that are maybe not, their mental health journey isn't as extreme, because I just haven't really been in that place. But just like those intense crippling thoughts, that's enough.
I think that, well, to say, it's tough. I can't think of like how to say this right now. I think it's hard to measure, not that I'm saying I've had a really difficult life. I'm extremely blessed. Like I acknowledge how blessed I am. Trust me, I love it. I am very thankful for the life that I have. I do not want anything to change right now except for the better. Like and even then it's kind of hard to think that this could be better, because I'm pretty appreciative of my life right now. But I think that it's difficult to measure, how suffering works, because there's definitely times where I couldn't fathom myself to say things like this. I've had times where I didn't want to keep going. I didn't want to keep doing this. And it's weird because sometimes someone has like kind of one thing that happens to them and it like kind of like affects them, and you can look at them and be like, hey, well, you know, it's pretty obvious what's impacting them because that thing happened to that guy one time. And so now that guy is like this, right? Like it's easy for us to connect the dots, but it's hard to measure sometimes because, you know, I've kind of, you know, experienced this, and I've seen it with other people as well, where sometimes it's a lot of little things that kind of like build up, right? So you could have like, yeah. And so you could have like a seemingly, you know, like normal life, but you know, there's like certain things in your head that are going a little bit wacky, right? And so that only really happens like, someone said to me one time, and this was about, you know, like working hard and making money, but I kind of, you can see it on both sides. And the saying is, you know, water doesn't cut through rock because of its strength, but because of its consistency. And so if you have like negative patterns in your life and you kind of have those like negative thought processes, even if your foundation is rock hard, like if that's consistent all the time in the back of your head, you're going to rot away, man. Like that's kind of what happened to me, right? So it's kind of weird. You can't really, it's tough to, you know, put a number on it. Like once you reach, you know, 60%, go and see someone. You know, it's such a weird idea because, you know, like where is too much suffering, right?
Yeah, and it's hard as well because you just get used to it after a while and you don't know what feels quote unquote off. You're used to it. And you're used to feeling pain and you're used to feeling discomfort and whatever it is that you feel, and you think that's just normal, or you think that that's just how it's always going to be. But really, like anything, like it doesn't really hurt to go to counseling anyways, or to a therapist, or to anything anyways, even if you don't think you're struggling with any sort of mental health. But there's always something that you can improve when it comes to your mind and, you know, bettering yourself in that way. I think there's no problem too small to seek help.
Yeah. I've kind of always thought to myself especially after my experience, I kind of thought to myself that, you know, if you feel like if you felt like you need help, you should probably just get the help. Because if you go out and get it, and like you said, if you don't learn anything from it and you don't get anything out of it, like at least you learned that you don't need it, right? Like at least you kind of have learned that, right? Like there's no real negative side to it.
Yeah, totally.
So having, you know, done, you know, like worked, you know, in the field that you're in right now, obviously it's kind of the same thing. You're kind of, you know, presenting somebody something that maybe they, you know, maybe they know they need, but they don't like say they need it, like think that they need it right now, or maybe they don't know they need it. Like what would you kind of say to someone? You know, it could be in regards to mental health, it could be in regards to your program. Like what would you kind of say to someone that, you know, was on the fence about, you know, getting some help, getting some assistance, and they just like they don't really seem like they're ready to pull the trigger on it like right now?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are afraid to invest because they're afraid that they're not going to see the results that they want. And, you know, people are always seeking those external results. Same thing with a fitness program. They're seeking that weight loss, or they're seeking that muscle build, or whatever, right? And so I think it's really just like questioning their fear, you know, like really questioning their fear and working with it and talking them through it, because oftentimes the fear isn't of actually investing, of actually spending the money. It's fear of not seeing the results. If people want the results, they will invest, because most likely, you know, these people probably haven't just been struggling for a few months. They've probably been struggling for a long time, whether it is a year or even their entire life. A lot of the women that I talk to have been struggling their entire lives, and they're frustrated and they're fed up, and you know, you can tell that they want the change, and they're scared because they've been struggling for so long. What makes them think that this is going to change their life, right? And I think that's harder to work through those things, because it's been such a long time of the same habits and and them telling themselves that they're always going to be in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really just about working through those fears and really questioning where those fears are actually coming from, and working with them on that and through that. And really also showing, like explaining the benefits of what it would bring to their life and the benefits of the benefits, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that a lot of the time that people struggle with, like I know myself, like if you can't, like visualize the end result,
Mm-hmm.
then it's not even worth like thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know there's been a few times where that's like kind of hindered me. I like the first one I kind of was like always skinny fat before I started working out.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of, I played rugby and I played hockey. I was kind of like a thicker kid, and I never had abs until,
Mm-hmm.
I was probably 18, 19. And I couldn't visualize. I could see abs on other people. I could never visualize what it would look like here. I could
Mm-hmm.
never visualize that. And it was actually so funny because it got to a point, especially like obviously once I competed, I got pretty lean and I had abs and didn't know it because I couldn't visualize. I literally didn't realize it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it got to a point where my buddy was like, dude, that's sick. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't understand it. I couldn't visualize it. And when I looked in the mirror, it was like blocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like with people that I have calls with, if they're inquiring about it or anything like that, I do a visualization meditation with them and
Wow,
talk them through it. So
that's
it's
sick.
really, really helpful. Like whether it's in regards to doing a program or really anything that you want to
Mm-hmm.
bring to fruition in your life, like it's really, really important to not only visualize, like not only see what that end result looks like, but also feel what that end result looks like, also feel what it took to get there, also feel the in-betweens, and like what are the emotions that you feel when you achieve that
Wow.
desired end result, right? So if you can actually like walk through that and like, okay, so you want this, you want to be free of, you want to feel confident in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that actually feel like to you? Because
Mm-hmm.
feeling confident, like, yeah, sure, you could say confident is a feeling, but there's something else in there. Like, does that make you feel more worthy, or does that make you feel more loved or more seen or heard? Like, those are the common things that often come up. It's like
Mm-hmm.
people feel invisible. They feel, when it comes to body confidence, people feel invisible. They feel that they're not worthy, or they don't, like they're just never going to be good enough. But that's what you need to feel how you will feel when you achieve that. So if your end result is to feel confident in your body, well, you're going to feel radiant. You're going to feel
Mm-hmm.
powerful. You're going to feel empowered. Like you're going to feel all these amazing feelings. And if you can actually feel that and visualize that for yourself, you can make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to actually see it for yourself. If you can't see it, you're not even going to work towards it. You can't see it.
Yeah. I started realizing how powerful visualizing was, and it's like, it's kind of weird. I've started to use it in really weird ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's insane. Like one thing that I do, like while COVID was done, I'm finally back in a gym now. So like I'm super stoked about that. But for like 3 months I wasn't lifting weights, which is kind of foreign to me. And I knew for myself, I have to stay active to be, like you said, like kind of like feel good. There's times where I kind of had a different experience. I don't ever look in the mirror and think, wow, I feel fat. I look in the mirror and I think, you lazy animal. Like you seriously look like you just sat around all day. Like, do you do any, like, that's kind of the thought in my head is like, dude, you look like a lazy person. Like, that's what happens to me. It's like, I kind of like think that. And so I knew, I was like, okay, I got to stay active every single day, or as close to as I possibly can. And I started picking up bike riding, because when I would run, I don't know how you ran 21K a day, because when I would run,
mine never matter.
I would run like 3K a day, 5K. Like I got to maybe 6K a day. and I would have the worst pain in my ankles and my knees.
Yeah.
So I was biking every day. And when I didn't want to bike, when I knew, say like I knew it was going to be like a late night and I had to get up early the next morning to bike, I would drive the route that I had to bike. And I would just think about it. Like I would think about, you know, because it's nighttime, it's dark. It's the same as it's going to be at 5 a.m. Like it's going to still be kind of dark, especially all like spring and winter. So like I just kind of drove it the night before. And like, that's how I would kind of visualize like, yeah, you're going to get up in the morning and do this. Like, this is what you're going to do. And I would like look at, okay, then you're going to go for this amount of time and then turn left here. And I just drove the whole route every single way.
Yeah, visualization is super powerful.
And yeah, it helped me stay really consistent. I remember like one time I was driving my buddy home and I was like, hold on, I got to do this route first. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, just visualize it. Yeah, I told him what I was doing. I don't care. I'm not embarrassed. It's my buddy. I don't care.
Yeah.
You make fun of me? Like, shut up. Shut up. It's that simple, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're my friend? Okay, shut up. Then yeah. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. Well, it's I gotta say, I'm eating up a lot of your time. It's getting pretty late here for me. I gotta be up early in the morning, and I know you probably have more valuable things to do with your time than stick with me for any more time. So I'll let you go, but I do have one more requirement for you. Everybody I make do this, so I'm gonna throw you on the spot right now. Yeah, and you're gonna do the outro, so you can kind of shout out your Instagram, shout out whatever social media you want, shout out wherever people can find you. Say whatever you want, but basically, I want you to share a little bit of positivity for the world. That's it. That's my only requirement. You gotta share some positivity with the world. And,
got it. Okay.
And you're doing my outro. That's how I get people to do my work for me.
Amazing. Well, first of all, thank you for having this conversation with me. I thought it was really fun. And I think there's a lot of valuable stuff.
Don't thank me. Thank you.
I think there was a lot of valuable stuff there.
Everyone thanks me. I know, but everyone thanks me. And people like, dude, if I was watching this, I'd be like, dude, he gets everyone to say something nice about him. Because everyone says something nice.
It's your channel, your podcast.
I'm awesome. I know.
So thank me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet episode there. Pretty sweet. So you can find me on my Instagram, which I will say again is at the Wellness Gypsy with an IE. And on there, I don't really use much other social media, but I do have a mailing list and a little freebie on my Instagram as well. So that's linked to my bio there, which there's always lots of freebies and little juicy exclusives. So you can join me on there as well. But yeah, thank you guys for watching or listening. And really, whatever you're going through, whatever struggles you're facing or barriers you're facing in your life, like, you got this, you can get through it. You just have to visualize it for yourself. You have to see it for yourself. That was a really good ending there. It's the visualization. Like, that's all you got to do, guys. It's just visualize it for yourself and see it for yourself, and it will come to fruition. So yeah, thanks everybody for listening, watching.
Beautiful.
That's all I got.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's it. Bang. We're done.